Hello, I'm Donna Joseph, and I'm so pleased to be introducing you to my very first podcast, Searching for Truth on Adoption, something that I'm extremely passionate about, being adopted myself. The truth is, if my adopted mum hadn't been sitting in a hairdresser's reading an article about adoption in a magazine, I may not have been adopted. It's as simple as that. So I really am passionate about this podcast. Now, this is also on video on my Facebook page, Visible Connections, and my YouTube channel. It's recorded live with my guest, Kathy Bradley. She's a fellow adoptee. Now, I would love this to work the way that magazine worked for my mom. Even if one child gets adopted from this, that would be amazing. So if you are adopted, thinking of adopting or fostering, maybe you've found your birth family, perhaps you're wanting to find your birth family. Or maybe you've given a child up for adoption. We're covering all of this within this podcast. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. And if you know anyone that you think this will resonate with, please share it. Because the more that listen or watch, hopefully will mean more people are talking about and hopefully considering adoption. Because the truth is, there are too many children out there waiting for their forever home. So, without further ado, I'm speaking to Kathy Bradley, fellow adoptee, all about adoption. Enjoy. You know, like when I spoke to you before, I said to you, I'm going to try and keep this down to half an hour. I don't know how much time you've got.
I got time.
Yeah?
We'll let it roll how it needs to.
Yeah.
I got my tissues. Good. As we know.
Yeah.
As we know. Start again.
Yeah, okay. So Kathy, we've known each other for around 6 years. And I've always considered our relationship quite close, pretty much from the start, especially considering you're in Florida. We've never actually physically met. It's only ever been like this. But it was kind of like this, as in I could see you because we were sort of designing a website together and stuff. So,
right.
But I've always felt quite close to you.
The connection.
And do you know what, Kathy? Before I even knew you were adopted, I think I felt a connection with you. You know
Absolutely.
how you do with some people, and
yep,
you don't, you do or you don't.
Yep.
And I think our birthdays are very similar as well, aren't they?
I'm in June.
Yeah, you're a Gemini.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that was it as well. You're a Gemini, same as me. I think we're around about the same age, but we don't need to go into that.
Nah, just a number.
So the reason why we've been talking about doing this podcast, or this certainly interview, talking to each other for a few years, because we've both got the fact that we were both adopted as babies in common. And I know it's something that we used to talk about when we first knew each other, and I was talking to you about adoption. I'd already found my birth family. And I know you would always talk about how you knew that your birth family was from England. Is that right? If I remember,
I didn't know for sure at the time because I hadn't done my DNA, but I felt within I was British, Irish, Scottish, somewhere in the islands there.
Yeah.
I felt very strong, always had.
I remember
felt
you
that
saying
way.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
And of course the DNA showed exactly that. Very high.
Yeah. And we're going to really talk about that, because I think it's fascinating how it came about that you found your birth family. Before that, I want to talk about how a little bit about your story. I mean, you were adopted as a newborn baby. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes. The family that I was supposed to go to came and looked at me at the hospital in Orlando, and they declined me because I had red hair and blue eyes.
That's a beautiful combination. You
Yeah,
don't
they
have you
said
don't
they
have red hair and blue eyes. Well, you might have blue eyes, but you haven't got red
yeah,
hair.
I do have blue eyes, but never had red hair. And so the next family was called, and that's the family that
Wow.
brought me home.
Wow. Do you not think it's just crazy how it's just taken out of your hands, really, isn't it? I mean, you just don't know
Hmm.
if that your life would have been completely different if that
Hmm.
family had have, you know,
Yep.
if you'd have had the hair color that they
Right.
wanted.
Right.
Uh,
A little scary to think because you're choosing a baby based on hair color. And my mother thinks that probably I had maybe not even been washed from delivery. And being that I, that's my profession, delivering babies, many babies are covered, and you really don't know exactly what hair color is until the baby gets a bath and all of that. So I've often thought, wow, I probably would have very, very superficial family, possibly, had I actually gone to that family.
I think so too. Yeah, I
Hmm.
think it's a
So,
blessing. Now,
yeah.
did you always know that you were adopted?
From as long as I can remember. And the reason why, and of course I got this book because I know we were doing the interview, but this is a book called The Chosen Baby. And it was originally written in 1939, and then this one was 1950. But my mother actually went through this book because I have a brother 2 years older, and he's adopted as well. And she went through and changed, the names to meet our names. So she personalized it about bringing another baby home. So I've always been told that I was a chosen baby just from the very beginning. I mean, well, let's see, I'm a few over 50, right? I'll say it. I'm 53 and proud of it. So
Good.
that's at least how old this book is. So, yep.
Yeah, because I know my adopted parents, they also fostered children.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst I don't actually remember being told and sat down, Donna, you were adopted,
Mm-hmm.
my mum always said, because there was me and my foster brother, and she said, I distinctly remember you both being in the garden and singing this song. And I was singing, I am adopted, and he'd be like, I am fostered. And she said, we were young, we were like 3, 4 years old, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I just always knew. And I don't know about you, but I think with that book, it says it for itself. But especially because I was in a fostering environment, being adopted, I actually felt special that they'd
Mm-hmm.
chosen me,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like, you may have hopefully had that as well with the fact that they've got that book with so much detail about being the
Well, I
chosen
think
baby.
for me, I had a cognitive understanding, but deep within, I always struggled. Where do I really belong? Like, why was I given up for adoption? What was the story behind that? So I
We're
was
going to
raised
talk,
very well, you
yeah,
know.
we're going to talk a lot about that because
Hmm.
as much as you can feel like the chosen one, and I felt special that they chose to adopt me and they fostered all the other children, there's still this deep, deep feeling of, well, why
Hmm.
didn't my mum want me? What
Hmm.
did I do wrong?
Hmm.
What
Yep.
and I don't think as a child you can escape that, no matter
Mm-mm.
how much you get the love.
Right.
Thankfully, I got love,
Hmm.
thankfully, and
Hmm.
you did.
Hmm.
God forbid those that are
Yeah.
adopted and don't, but
Right.
even so, it was, yeah, it was, you can't escape from that, can you?
Mm-mm. No, because I mean, I don't think anymore. I know, being in the world of birth and understanding, and I just recently, like in February, went to a conference on all around breastfeeding, and it was on placenta. And they were showing how in ancient cultures, or not just so ancient, but especially like the Egyptians, the placenta is considered the seat of the soul. So in royalty, it would actually have its own housing, even though it would get very dry, dried up and get hard. And when the royalty died, the placenta was placed back over the top of the person, and then they were buried. And so it started, they started looking at the different parts and pieces of the placenta. Um, well, not parts and pieces, but just overall. And the placenta has a lot more regulation into that baby than what had ever had originally been thought. I mean, we know if mom's in fight or flight, the baby inside the womb, the placenta will run interference for that. But if she spends a long time in stress, in fight or flight is that normalcy, then the placenta no longer downgrades, and all of the hormones that are around anxiety and fear flood into that baby, and then that baby is programmed at a DNA level to have higher cortisol levels.
Wow.
And it's just really interesting.
Yeah.
So for me, it started putting a lot of the pieces together as I started looking back. Why do I do the things I do? Why, just the choices you make in life, and always dealing with that rejection, that deep rejection. It started making a lot of sense for me. So I don't even know how we got there real quick on that one.
No. I mean, I hear you. When I was adopted, I was driven from, I always say this, it's part of my story. I was driven from one of the roughest parts of the city of Nottingham to one of the nicest suburbs by a social worker. And all that came with me was a blue washing up bowl with all my things in it. And in there was a letter to my adopted parents from my birth mum. And in that letter it said that I don't sleep well. I'm quite and my adopted mum was fine with that, because she looked after lots of babies and stuff that cried through the night. But that night, that first night, I slept so well that my adopted mum and dad, had to keep coming in to check on me,
check on you,
to check that I was okay. And I look at that, being quite spiritual now in my adult life, I look at that and I think, was that because I was finally where I was supposed to be? Was I was on my life's past journey. This is where I'm supposed to be, because I slept all through.
My mom, my adopted mom, would say that I would go in as a toddler and put my hands through the slats of the crib to get into the crib. I think the crib was the safety zone for me, thinking back about that. She also said that in the days, I'm not sure how long out it lasted, that I would shake violently. My whole body would just do this. And she'd say, "George, what do I do with her?" And he'd say, "Just hold her tight, So I often wondered, was I, coming off of, was my mom involved with addictions, alcohol, or was it just that sense of, I don't feel safe? And that is an issue that I have, have dealt with for years, of feeling safe, so just very, very interesting.
Yeah. There's something on that I want to mention as well. And I was going to school, like kindergarten school, infant school. I would always draw a house with 4 windows and a door and a garden. And I remember getting told off for it when I was getting a bit older, and we were obviously told to draw something, but I still just drew a house with 4 windows and a door and a garden.
Interesting.
And I remember getting told off for it because I didn't like getting told off. So I remember that, and I look back at that and I think, wow, that's security. That home that I had was my security.
Yeah.
And I thank God I had that.
It's interesting that you connected deeply to that. I had a great home. I had great parents. We were middle class. We grew, when I was 5 or 6, we went to a different country in Panama Canal. My dad worked as a civil servant there, and great upbringing, 2 languages. I mean, I never was hungry. I never didn't have shoes. I mean, I was very well cared for, brought up in a very moral family, yet deep within, it was always, who has my back? Who's got my back? And who do I really belong to? That belonging was so huge.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize any of that until much older. As an adult, you can start looking back and just see patterns and like, oh yeah. My brother's adopted, and he didn't, I mean, we're all uniquely different.
Yeah,
So,
this is it. My cousin was also adopted, and we were quite close with the cousin. We had a big house because the foster children and stuff, and so
hmm
it was kind of like a, for kids, our house was like a real adventure. We had a playroom, and everything was in. It was allowed to be a mess because it was a
hmm
playroom and there was kids. So my cousin would always come to ours to play, and she was adopted as well. But she was very different to me. She had no interest whatsoever to find
yep,
her birth parents at all.
yep,
Quite significantly for me is being of colour, mixed race, however you politically want to say it, black.
right.
I
hmm
was different to the rest of my family. In fact, I was different to the whole village, colour wise. And as far as I was concerned, until a certain age, the whole goddamn world, I just didn't know.
Right.
So I do wonder sometimes whether that had something to do with my yearning to
hmm
find where I came from. I'm sure it was a factor, but
hmm
but my cousin was just so different. She was just, I mean, and she was an only child. She was their only adopted child. She's the only child, so that was quite
Right.
significant as well.
hmm
But yeah, I had a real longing, a real longing to, as I got older, to know my mom. I felt, to be honest, I don't know if we've ever spoken about this, but I always felt, and especially now I know how spiritual I am and
hmm
how connected I can feel with energy and things. I always felt very connected to my birth mom.
hmm
Did you ever feel any connection?
No, I didn't. In fact, for me, um, so everybody understands the concept of 360 degrees, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go out 180, right, like to either side, right? I was very aware of everything peripheral and forward, but everything behind me was like a black abyss. I knew nothing. Did
Yeah.
not have anything back there. And so there was nothing like often who has my back because there was nothing back there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to say it, but at a spiritual level, that's where I was. Who's got my back? And so I was very much driven to be the best at everything I could do. I learned at a very early age, for me, don't do group sports because if the fat kid's on your team, they're going to slow you down. And so I recognized very early on, like past the age of maybe 8 or 9, I did sports that were solely dependent on me, that I didn't have to depend on anybody else because my approval or acceptance into this world was going to be based on how I could perform.
Wow.
So I was always very driven. And there's healthiness to that, but there's always a place of balance and then out of kilter. And so yes, did that, I'm a business owner today. Did that help? Yes. But then emotionally, you're always I think you're always just maybe in fight or flight. You're always just up at that. Nobody's got my back, so I better watch and see where I need, to guard myself.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, I envied my foster family, my foster brothers and sisters, because they were able to see their their birth mother or father.
mm,
Although there was very sad cases with that, but they used to all go into the best room with their social worker and their parent or whatever, and I never had that. And I wonder if that contributed to some of my longing
I
to.
never looked like anybody.
No,
My
no,
brother was
neither
adopted. We
did
didn't,
I.
I mean, we were both blue eyed, blonde hair, and later in life, I mean, there were people, in our adult life, they were like, we always thought you guys were truly brother and sister. Like they didn't realize we were adopted. And I don't know if just over time or just that's how God, did things. But I just, until I had my own children, I didn't look like anything. And I married a man who was also adopted himself.
Wow.
And we had 5 children. So we always called our children potluck because you never knew, are we going to get that recessive red hair gene or, what are they going to look like? But as my children grew up, that was the only thing I could look at that had resemblance because nobody looked like me.
Now, I know I'm skipping on a little bit, and we'll get to this, but I'm skipping on a little bit because you did meet your birth mum,
Mm-hmm.
albeit, yeah, briefly.
The
And we'll
family.
talk about
Mm-hmm.
that in a moment, because
Mm-hmm.
I, for one, this whole thing of you turning to your, as women especially, you turn into your mum,
Mm-hmm.
start talking like her, feeling like her, acting like her. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, so I'm finding out about my birth mum now because I'm like becoming much more aware of myself and my isms and stuff.
Right, 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 right.
My mum's passed away, so
Mm,
I don't know what she, what she was like or what she would have been like.
right.
Um, but do you feel that as well? Do you feel like you're turning into your mom as you get older?
I don't, I don't, I only got to meet her one time before she passed away, and she was about 94. So she was 43 when she had me, and she already had six other children. So that in itself helped me understand it in 1967 why you might give a child up for adoption. You know, her husband and the father of those six children had passed away. She finds herself pregnant, and it's logical to give me the life that she did, and put me up for adoption. But the sorry, my computer just did something here. It's the joys of doing an interview across the pond. um, but when I met my siblings, my sister, my one sister in particular, she just kept going, "Oh my God, your mannerisms, everything, like how you talk." She goes, "You resemble mom more than any of us do." And
Wow.
that blew my mind because I was not around any of them. They said how I moved my hands, how I talked, just was so much. And interestingly enough, the siblings, right? Like my sister and I, we played tennis. We were beauty queens. It was very interesting, the similarities, but yet we never met each other.
Hmm.
Just that is interesting. So they say my mom was very social. She loved to host parties and be around people, which is totally me. You know, um, she was a nurse. I'm in the healthcare profession, so those things are very interesting.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
Definitely. And the line from my mother's side, my grandfather, my great grandfather were very entrepreneurial, with businesses. And so those things are just very interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How I found my paternal side of the family, and I didn't find them. It was actually somebody, a friend of mine, happened to be, and I'm not going to talk too much about this because it's a thing, it's a podcast in itself. But
Mm-hmm.
a friend of mine happened to be going out with a guy who actually was my brother, but I didn't know he was my brother. And him and my friend went to see my sister, and my friend comes back from London and says, "Oh my God, Donna, I've just met somebody who's got exactly the same mannerisms as you. It's crazy."
Mm.
And in a very there's a long story as how it sort of that just opened a can of worms. But it was the mannerisms. And when I was sat with my sister a few years ago, and we were sat opposite each other, and we were both like this. We were just, it was. Oh my gosh. I mean, some people are listening to this, they can't see it, but it is on video, this podcast as well. So I'm just kind of doing
A
the
hand gesture up on
mannerism.
your face. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like, and it was like, oh my God. And it's kind of freaky, isn't it? When you
It
see,
is, especially when you're used to having none of that around. Like you're your own individual, but like you really aren't connected to anybody in those ways. And then, of course, when I met my brother, who I did actually no, I met my sister first, and then my brother, and we just look how like, oh my gosh, they look like me. They the same chin, the same nose, and then the manners. It is rather mind. I still get tickled by it when I think about it
yeah.
because I've only known for about 4 or 5 years for
So
me.
let's talk about that. Let's talk
Hmm.
about how that happened. Because I mean,
So,
I remember, I was crying.
yeah, it was an incredible season for me for sure. Um, it was via DNA, it was through Ancestry. But how it started was about 18 months prior to that. I finally just decided I had wanted to do DNA testing all along, but it used to be $400 and $500. And I spent years looking. I would go to Orlando to the library and I'd look up microfiche And I would look at like entries into the hospital. And back then, women, when they went to have babies, would stay
What's
4 or 5
sorry, what's
days.
microfiche? You look
Microfiche. Here it's old things that are, oh God, how would you describe microfiche? It's how they stored information many, many years ago they took digital pictures and it would run through a screen, and you, like newspapers, they would just take picture, picture, picture and put it on this film, and then you ran it through and you could see. And so I would go back and look at the newspapers from 1967
Oh wow.
to see if I could figure out who went into the hospital and who came out, and the babies were announced. And I did a lot of trying to search on my own to the best of my ability. The state in Florida, you have a right to non-identifying information. So I wrote, and they kept saying, we've lost your file, we cannot locate it. My husband at the time, he wrote, and he got like a 5-page of like all kinds of information. So yet again, I had come up empty. But nonetheless, I decided to do my DNA when it got cheap enough. I just wanted to, am I Chinese? Am I Japanese? Am I Italian?
No, yeah.
What am I, right? Like, where's my tribe?
Yeah.
And I took bets, like, like, okay, I betcha it's the British Isles. It has to be somewhere over there, Norway, Sweden, and I have a hint of that too. But so I did my thing, and I remember exactly where I was when the report came in. I was at, I'm going to say it wrong, Nahatan Falls in Portland, Oregon. I was out visiting a man I was dating at the time.
Yeah.
He was out there working on a job, and I'd flown out there. And I remember standing there, and actually my son Colton was with me. We'd both flown out. And I remember looking at it and just sobbing. Oh my God, I'm British Isles. Oh my God. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I was right. It was, and you play Celtic music, and I'm just like, there's just something inside me that awakens. And that's how I always knew it must be something over there. Well, I don't know why, but I just never dawned on me that somebody from my birth family would actually do it and it would connect. I literally had given up and just figured, I just at least want to know, where am I from? Where are my roots from? Yeah. So jump 18 months ahead to around mid-December of that particular year. And my son had some chest pains. I ran into the emergency room. Turned out it was pleurisy. And the doctor said, what's the medical history? And I remember thinking, well, I'll make it real easy for you. You can put a line through everything. Mom's adopted and his dad's adopted. And that's how it was. That's your story when you're adopted. You just get the line. There's no history. Yeah. You get the line through, and that's what you know. And I remember thinking, God, it would be really interesting to know even just the medical history. I got home, got him his meds, got him settled down, and I looked at my email, and there was an email, and it said, hey, this is Mark, I'd like to talk to you. Our DNA, I've been looking for you. Our DNA ancestry was very high. I immediately picked up the phone and said, hey, cousin, what's up? Because at that time we're thinking cousin, right? Because that's how, when you have a different father but the same mother, it doesn't put you exactly like, brother and sister. It's like a very close cousin. So I'm, yo, cuz, what's up? And we started talking, and it didn't take us very long. He said, I think you're the baby sister that never came home. And so what he understood was, he knew his mom was pregnant. He was about 14 at the time. His mom was pregnant. A man would come, he'd take her out. He said he drove like a white, flashy, brand new, like Cadillac or something. He'd come to the door, mom would go out, and they'd go. And he said when she went to have the baby at the hospital, when she came home, he said, where's my baby? And she said, I've lost the baby. And he said she went in and kind of didn't come out of her room for a couple months, very depressed. And as he got older, he began to think and realize that you would do a ceremony, you would do something, if the baby had really passed away and died. And so he began to think that there has to be a child out there somewhere. So I think his buddy was doing DNA, and he said, okay, I'll do it. And it matched. And it was like, oh my gosh, I have 6 siblings. And then, oh my gosh, my mother's alive. She had dementia, but she was alive. So,
and you've got that, maybe because we are putting this on YouTube as well. I don't know if we can share that, but I remember you did share a video of
of
you
meeting her.
your birth mom.
Yep.
What was that like? I mean,
I tried to be real. I'm a very emotional, I'm a feeler, right? I had spent, wow, I can already feel it. I had spent so long looking, right? Because you just want to belong. But I tried to be very, I tried to step back and have no expectations because I knew she had dementia. And already just the gift of meeting my sister and my brother and learning was such a gift that I just really tried to stay just kind of neutral. My mother who adopted me actually went with me. She had a picture of me for like 6 months of age, and she gave that to my mother and my birth mother and thanked her for the gift of life because,
oh my God, can't believe that.
my mom said, even the attorney said, abortion was very, had become legalized. And so the amount of children that were available were reducing down. And so because they already had my brother who was adopted, the attorney said that, you're not necessarily going to be high on the list, so it was definitely a gift. And she was in a wheelchair and I walked up to her and I leaned over and she just, I said, "Hi, I'm Kathy." And she said something like, "Well, we've missed you. We've all missed you," because she was up from southern, Kentucky, or I think, in Kentucky, very southern. And so then we went and sat down and ate, and Mark was feeding her, and I would catch her looking at me, but we really weren't really able to have conversation because of the dementia.
Yeah.
So, and then it wasn't much longer. I think that was in January. And then in May, she passed in her sleep. And I truly, the depths of me, believe she waited. I truly believe she waited to meet me. Maybe that's just selfishness, but she died in her sleep. And I do believe that she waited. Because I told God, I'd finally come to the place, and I told God 2 weeks before the DNA matched, I said, "I recognize my creator as the beginning and the end. You know everything. If this was a case of incest, what the history is, what my heart could handle and what it couldn't handle. And I release everything to you, and I'll never ask you again to find my parents."
And that was a conversation you had 2 weeks before.
2 weeks before, and then it connected.
Yeah.
And what's even more crazy is I have a sister that was 3 years older than me, and she had passed away a year to the day on December 13. So she was the baby sister that everybody knew, right? So she passes away December 13th. But guess whose DNA matches to the baby sister? I don't think there's anybody else behind me. So it's like the family got another baby sister.
Wow.
So you wonder, how much did Dee Dee have to do with that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of just like, ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, I believe that, I believe in this stuff. I believe if you dream, or if you want something enough, that you'll get it.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, I dreamed of finding my family, and because I was felt quite lonely as a child, I used to daydream a lot.
Mm-hmm.
In those daydreams, I guess what I was actually doing without realizing it is manifesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wanted brothers and sisters, lots of them, all the same color as me. I dreamed and dreamed, and now I've got so many brothers and sisters all the same color as me. So I'm a real believer in all of that.
Yeah.
There's so much more going on that we can't actually physically see.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
I don't know about you, Kathy, but it was only through reading a book. I'm quite surprised that I hadn't thought about this before. So I'm keen to find out from you. But it was only through reading a book of a guy that was talking about in depth what it was like, what it must have been like for his mom, the time that she, for you, it was in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
When you were born. For me, she'd had me for 3 months. But that initial handover for a
Mm-hmm.
birth mother, I'd never really, maybe I just hadn't wanted to think, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't even, that must be one of the hardest things.
Well, for me, it wasn't until I had children
Yeah.
and I breastfed my children. And there were many times I would look down at my babies and think, how in the world could you have given up a baby? And there were two sides of that thinking, right? There was the side that was angry of like, how could you give up a baby? But then that motherly of, oh my God, the love that you must have to be able to give up a baby,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That was huge. And I don't think I realized a lot of that until I raised my own children. I'd often thought, and in even learning that my mother breastfed all of her children, and I'm a board certified lactation consultant, my mind went to, oh my gosh, in 1967, the placenta clears the body and it triggers lactogenesis too. So then you have the whole onslaught of milk that comes, and we only continue to produce milk when we remove milk. So the baby feeds or we pump, and then the body just continues the cycle.
She would
And
have,
I thought, oh
yeah.
my gosh, her body, she was used to nursing these babies. I can't imagine the hormones. And my brother said she basically was in her room for like 2 to 4 months. And I get it. I imagine now what we understand to be postpartum depression probably was pretty heavy duty for her.
Oh
I
God,
would
yeah.
think.
God, yeah.
You
And I
know?
want to talk about that because I personally have got. I wish my birth mum were alive so that I could share and tell her, thank you,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for having the. I don't know if it's courage. I don't know, but she did me a huge favor because now I know
Mm-hmm.
what the circumstances were,
Right.
and I was blessed. She
Mm-hmm.
did
Me
the
too.
absolute right thing for me, and I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to really get that across in this podcast because I know
Mm-hmm.
that there are going to be women that have had to do this and have done it, and
Mm-hmm.
probably, whereas we've talked about us as children longing for our birth parents, and birth
Mm-hmm.
mothers that have given up children would probably be really hurt hearing that and
Mm-hmm.
thinking about their own. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I can also imagine that every year on the
Yep.
birthday.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. I used to always think that on my birthday too. I would think, Mom, you remember me? You know? And I love my parents. I mean, I think that's the other thing that's very there's like a division almost because you love who's raised you. It's nothing against them. It is just something very deeply, there's that desire to connect that which you come from.
Yeah.
And so I often would, on my birthday, just like, I wonder if you remember it's my birthday. I'm sure you remember it's my birthday. And you're thinking of me. And I would say, I'm thinking of you. Are they connecting? You know? It's funny, I don't remember. It's, until I really think about it, I go back to that. Um, that's why I say I think she waited. I
Yeah.
do, in my story. So
Yeah.
I've since learned about my paternal side, and my father has passed. I actually have a half brother who doesn't know me, who lives
Wow, I
in
didn't know that.
Charleston, and it is also a oh, I just totally dropped, a musician as well. I mean, he has another job, but there's a lot of musicians in our family, and he still does not know I exist.
Wow.
So I'm trying when I found out through a cousin who did DNA, they said there were four brothers and they were all married like 50 and 60 years in the past. And so I can imagine it would be quite like, ta-da, here I am. So I just kind of wait. I think about it, and then I want to push the envelope because I have found him on Facebook, but then I want to sit back and there's timing to everything, and
I'm
just
really
wait for
glad
that timing.
you've said that because there are going to be people listening or watching this that might be thinking, I'm gonna find them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
You have to be prepared for a lot of potential ways it can play out. And it's not, I understand I have a very unique story.
Yeah.
Mine is a story of incredible gift around Christmas time. I mean, I was very much aware that I was being given an incredible gift of connecting to my family. But not everybody is that way. Not everybody can handle the emotions. Like, especially if on my father's side, married all those years, how someone sees their father, now they have to consider a different, because DNA, I mean, I guess you could really get in and say DNA can lie. I know there's some very unique things, but for the most part, DNA doesn't lie. Mm-hmm. And so they would then have to deal with, oh gosh, maybe dad wasn't who we thought he was. So this can be very vulnerable when you get into any of this. It's not easy. Not for the weak-hearted. That's for sure.
It's not. And
a lot of grit.
I had a dream last night, and I don't know. I'm going to mention it because the fact that it was last night and I'm talking to you today, and I've never thought about this before, but it was a dream it was a fictional dream, because the people in it, that I just know for a fact that they haven't adopted a child, they haven't had a child, and it's been out for adoption. So it's quite random that it was this. I think I might phone her and just double check actually, but it was a young girl who had been adopted. This is in my dream. Had managed to find her birth mum, who was my friend, and then her dreams just go off on wild, and she was going to meet up with her daughter, and she was telling me about it, and she was going to do a little she was going to do it in secret and meet at this piece of place. Anyway, what I woke up with, the thing I want to mention and talk about now, is that how much easier now with the internet could it be for girl. I mean, I just remember what I was like as a teenager. I was desperate, and I just wanted to see a picture of her, because I know certain ththings have changed with some adoptions where you can maybe see your birth.
The open adoptions.
It's different in different circumstances, but for me, there was absolutely no way until I was 18 I would not be able to. But I was desperate to see a picture of her. I wanted to see what she looked like. I wanted to hold on to a picture. I wanted to have that picture, and that was, I knew. And that is another story. That caused a whole load of issues for me, because I found that picture. But how different is it today, Kathy? How much easier do you think it is? And I wanted to bring it up because for some reason I had this dream, and I don't know who's going to be listening or watching this, but I imagine, that there's a lot of, because you feel almost lost a little bit, don't you, when you're adopted? A lot.
Oh yeah. I don't think you belong anywhere.
No.
It's the belonging. For me, I always, where do I belong? And I don't know that every adopted person, I have my own theories on it. I think truly the human spirit hears. We know that babies hear audibly in the womb, but we know being very connected by the human spirit, right? I've done some work in what my subconscious heard in the womb, which really pushed my comfort zone. If even a year or two ago, you would have said, oh, Kathy, you're going to do da, 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 I would have been, nah, that stuff's weird and freaky, but now I'm just totally in a different place. But I really do think that something deep within us calls out to the belonging to who we are DNA connected to, right? I believe some people have just disconnected from that. It's too painful. Don't know. I'm just going to accept this, and we're going to go with that. And I think that for those people, that's fine. Today's adoptions, I can speak to, what's available here in the U.S. The open adoption is so much more. As a birth worker, I've done deliveries where the baby is being put up for adoption, but the family that it's going to is in the room with them. I mean, it's incredible how the open adoption, how that can be. I don't know, I guess if they have that in England, but here they do. So, I know somebody who currently has said, I've thought about doing my DNA, but I don't know what the heck is going to come up. because I have three sisters I never met. I guess it was his father's second wife or first wife or whatever. But you do have to think the DNA kind of forces a hand in some areas, for some people, depending on how that adoption went down and the secrecy of all that stuff, for that then to be like, here it is wide open. I'm very grateful that all of my siblings wanted to and were open to me. I had one sibling who wasn't, but I didn't take it personally. I was told he had other things that he was dealing with, and I didn't get a chance to meet him before he passed away. So two of my six siblings have passed away, but yeah, I definitely think it's healthier. There's some healthier options out there on adoption. So, anybody that would be listening to this that's either thinking of giving a baby up for adoption or thinking of adopting, I think now more than any time, it's more favorable for both sides.
Yeah.
Because ultimately a child is looking for love. And there's families that want to raise a child and contribute and give into somebody's life.
Yeah. And I think overall, a big outcome that I would really love to get from this podcast is for more children to be adopted, to open up that. You've mentioned how it was. Well, no, you haven't actually. You haven't really mentioned how your mum, she knew she was going to adopt. She was going to adopt two children, right? She had your brother, and
well, she had adopted my brother, and she was on the list for a second baby.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, my mum, she was in her hairdressers, having her hair done, as you do, and reading a magazine, and it talked about the amount of mixed race children that were kind of in the middle. There weren't any black adopters. There weren't really many white adopters that wanted to take mixed race children. So my mum, after getting her hair done, spoke to my dad. A few months later, they had me.
Wow, that's so cool.
It's like, wow. What if that magazine hadn't been on the top of that pile? What if you decided to have your hair done another day? It's just like, it's just it's like your hand is in, like, it's just your life is in that. And so if I'd love for this podcast to, get people thinking about it, because there are so many children that are really desperate for that forever home.
Yep.
And there are so many parents out there as well. But
I've thought of fostering. It has crossed my mind. I'm a single woman now. I've been divorced 13 years, but and I have two boys that are at home, almost 20 and 23. So there's a part of me that if I were to foster, I'd want to foster more like 15, 16, 17-year-olds, to be able to contribute into their life. But that's a lot to take on too, your whole life just shifts and becomes that, so
I love that you said that, because I know a lot of people go, oh, I would foster or adopt, but I want a baby.
Yeah, it's like a puppy. Nobody wants the older dogs, they just want the puppies.
Yeah.
But think about the children that are in foster care. For me, it's I was raised, my dad's pretty strict. I was raised very strict, very, like I mentioned before, it has contributed a lot to my successfulness in life. And a friend of mine, we're talking the other night, and he said to me, he said, how you were raised actually contributed. You can't deny that you're very moral, you're the rule follower to a certain degree, all of those pieces. But I'm a very empathetic person. I don't want anybody to ever feel rejected. I want everybody to feel that they're loved and valued. And yet I started with a therapist in January because there were some things I was having a hard time. I just was like, I need some insight from somebody else, some things I was dealing with. And oh my gosh, it roots all the way back to my adoption is where I can go back to where that, as I mentioned to you before, that needing to feel safe, right? Goes all the way back there. And it wasn't anything that my parents did or did not do. it's inward self-work and worth that really is the key to, being set free of that, oh my gosh, where do I belong? Just recognizing and going, oh, okay. And I am going to be okay. I'm okay in this world. I can be unto my own,
Yeah.
and trust my creator to along this journey of life.
Yeah.
So yeah, my heart really goes out to those children that are not the babies.
Yeah, no, I know. And I kind of really resonate with you there, because I've always, and even now, feel I'm on a journey of still finding out about myself, and there's been layers of things that I've kind of put there to protect myself. But I did have the fundamental ingredient growing up, and that was love. I had unconditional love from the moment that my adoptive parents had me. I was loved, and that saved me. And this is the power of adoption and fostering.
Yes.
Unconditional love. If you can, it breaks my heart when I hear of breakdowns within adoption and fostering, because that's like a double rejection. Then that's like a double grief for the child.
Yep.
But let's say we can get it right, and what that can do, and the child may still have issues. I mean, God damn it, we all have issues.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If it's not this, it's going to be something else. So
Life,
yeah. Yeah.
But that unconditional love, especially if it's a child that's coming in older because of what they've potentially been through already, it's so important. And I'm really, really, really passionate about that, and really hope that this can maybe open up some conversations about it. And also I'd like, for any parents out there that have given their children up for adoption, hopefully it can maybe alleviate a little bit of pain listening to this.
Right.
Because certainly for me, I'm very grateful to my mom for letting me go.
Gosh, yeah.
Letting me go.
Yeah, I think my life would have been a lot different had she kept me. Being a single mom, I would have been the seventh child. She was 43, a lot harder. I definitely think I was given a great upbringing. I mean, I'm well traveled, I'm diversified, and so for me, it was, my brother and I had a great upbringing. I mean, we've traveled, just cool things we did. Our parents really exposed us to a lot of things. And I'm very aware that not everybody that gets adopted gets that life, but I would hope that if anybody's listening who's, had to release a baby, that to be gentle on themselves and to not shame themselves, that, in life we do what we need to do because it's the best we can do where we are. Life doesn't always stay that way. Circumstances could change later, but even choices and things I've done, I just did what I knew to do because it's the best I could do where I was. If we could let go of the self-shame and the self-hatred and all of those things and really love ourselves, right? And who we are, it is a lot of freedom that comes in that. And, as we all say, I still deal with that, I'm a work in progress, and I will be probably till I take my last breath here on this earth.
Yeah. And what do you do to sort of help you on your journey of, loving yourself? And you mentioned therapy. Have you got any, what do you do? What do you,
Well, I think one of the things for me that helped in therapy is my therapist said, "You're a really smart woman." I always dumbed myself down. I always just figured that I was just, I was just regular, I was just a regular run of the mill person kind of thing. And, for me, learning about my situation and forgiving them, You know, forgiveness is a real key piece, and it's not necessarily for the other person, it's for your own freedom. And I always think, you know, I think about when somebody has bitterness, right? It's like they're you're drinking the poison but expecting them when you hold bitterness against somebody else. So when I was able to go back on my own time and forgive my father and forgive my DNA, I call them my DNA father and mother, that they only were doing what they meant to do, it really alleviates and it brings a lot more freedom. That I, you know, when I hold something, think about it, if I'm holding on to that unforgiveness, it doesn't allow me to move in freedom because I'm tied to that. But when I can accept and let go and say, I forgive you, you did what you needed to do, that frees me up to then go, who is Kathy? Who's Catherine Ann?
Yeah.
And what is she going to do with her life, and where is she going to go with it?
I love
So those are the things that for me, going way back and just letting go of those pieces and understanding, not beating myself up, that I have always dealt with rejection and the fear of abandonment. So the analytical side, the very smart side of me, would very much beat up that emotional side, because the analytical could say, look at your surroundings, you're not alone. You have a college degree, you have this, you have that, you've been successful, blah, blah, blah. And that very intellectual person is over here condemning this small child, this emotional person, if you want, that just wanted to be loved and held and known she would be safe all of her life. And so for me, I still work on that. When I find myself becoming self-critical, I have to stop and go, stop being critical and allow her just to feel her emotion. I was always told, you're so emotional. You're so emotional. Well, yeah, I'm emotional. I am. You know, it was like my feelings, I didn't feel that my feelings were valued. Because remember, I was given away. So the way I perceived and who I was, I had to be top notch, because at any time I could be given away. That, even though that's not logical, deep within, that was the fear. That was the programming that was running. If you don't always succeed, if you don't get those grades, if you don't get people to like you, man, at any time, man, you're out of this.
Yeah.
And so going back and recognizing, no, that's a lie. Those are not truths.
Yeah.
Your voice is valuable. What you have to say is of contribution.
Yeah.
You can be of, you can, I love this statement, right? I'm a human being, not a human doing. I've spent so much of my life being a human doing, because if I could just do enough, I would then be okay. And I've had to go, that's impossible. I just get to be and just be. And that's hard, to just be and not do. Yeah. So those are some of the things of my journey and my, you know, of coming into more healthy mental thinking, you know, around it.
Yeah. As people get to know a bit more about me during these podcasts, they'll know that I can be a bit woo-woo sometimes about things.
What is woo-woo in the English over here in Britain?
So spiritual. So I am.
Oh, okay. Airy fairy is what we might call it over here in the US.
Airy fairy, yeah.
Yeah.
And I did do an angel reading before this podcast, and I just chose 3 cards, and I've got them over there actually. The first card was freedom. The second card was essence of love. These are angel cards. I always get that one. And the third card was something that you've just mentioned, forgiveness. And for me, these cards, I've had them for 20 odd years, and yeah, they're speaking with this podcast. Really, I really feel those things. Freedom. What you were just in essence talking about there is always setting yourself free, isn't it? You know.
Well, we believe lies. Somewhere we've believed a lie. And so our reality is that lie, but it's a false reality. So when we can recognize that and then forgive ourselves for being in tuned with that, because belief is powerful. When you come into alignment with that belief, it'll project itself out in your whole life. Well, you come into agreement with that lie, everything that projects out is coming from that. So if you can recognize the lie and then go, I don't want to participate that anymore. There's a process in that. I always say healing is messy. You know, sometimes I can be a really messy individual in my thinking because I'm trying to untangle all this stuff that I've believed about myself. And when you start entangling yourself, you're actually rewiring your brain. It's called neuroplasticity. I mean, on a biological level, globally, scientists now know about the brain more than we've ever known. And belief is powerful. So you mentioned it earlier. When you believe, when you dream, those are all projection. So we choose each day, you know, life or death, blessings, cursings, which way are we going to go? And I've had to get real intentional about my thinking. Where's my thinking? Where do I have stinking thinking? And coming into like being able to even recognize it, you know, and then be intentional about stopping and changing that. And that's where freedom comes from.
Yeah.
And you have to forgive. I'm very good at forgiving everybody else. I'm very hard on myself. I hold myself higher intensity than I do other people. So that's where I've had to work and go, I'm just a girl. I'm just a girl who's going through life, who's had some crazy experiences that I never signed up for. Nobody asked me, and I didn't check off the boxes of life's rude experiences. So I'm just a girl. And I think when we come into that and we can settle, we're a lot more merciful with other people too. You know, the saying, hurt people. It's so true. So when we can come out of that hurt and heal that and come into love, then we become more loving people.
Well, the second card was the essence of love, and I just want to just talk about that because we've touched on the fact that it's not always going to be a happy, lovely story, finding your family, and in a lot of cases, I can imagine it's actually not. I feel so blessed that it worked out, and I'm so thankful. But love, I wanted to just touch on this because the importance of having that love within yourself. You know, I believe we're all born full of love, but then because of things, circumstances, choices that had nothing to do with us, the love, it almost feels like the love just goes down and down and down, and you start to feel empty. And it can be that emptiness that then makes you want to go and find perhaps, you know, something that's missing to go out there. But actually, and if that doesn't work out and you are empty of love, then it's going to be hugely destroying mentally, physically, emotionally, just the mere fact that it's not worked out.
Right.
But the destruction on yourself because you are empty.
Right.
Just, you know, and I think, you know, it's not just adoption. There's so many different circumstances as to why we do have a lot of suffering, a lot of human suffering.
Well,
So,
think about the children that were never given up for adoption, but the stresses of that family, living in that family. How many people can attest to, I didn't feel loved growing up, and yet they were with their DNA family. So that essence of love, you know, that's across all terrains, cultures, countries. Yeah, I do believe we are created beings, and we're meant to be in relationship, and how to navigate healthy relationships, you know. And yeah, children have things that happen to them that nobody signs up for. And then we spend our life trying to, where a lot of the addictions come out of, right? Of trying to self-love, self-medicate because we have an owie deep within. And so if we don't have that guidance on how to process through healthy, that we'll just do whatever. And I can sit in a place now and I don't blame anybody for that, because everybody just wants to feel okay, feel good, feel loved. And when we don't have that, we will do other things to try to we're actually pretty intelligent creatures. I mean, pretty sophisticated when you think about, well, we'll go to these other things to try to do that.
Yeah.
But love is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. So self-love, learning that forgiveness of what I think other people did against me, and that I'm okay. Just, I can be okay with me. I don't have to have anybody, you know, have to be in a relationship. I don't have to be here or there. I'm okay to just be by myself. That's huge. Huge, huge.
It is. And I think for myself, many years, certainly in my 20s, I feel like I was sleepwalking.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know who I was, you know,
Mm-hmm.
only until I started getting into my 30s and actually got into a good relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a good relationship, but I was still sleepwalking, so I don't think I was really aware that it was a good relationship until a little bit later. And then, yeah, it's the self-love, isn't it? I
Mm-hmm.
think everyone watching this, whether you're just watching it, I mean, or listening to it, or whether you adopted yourself or fostering or adopting, whoever you are, that self-love is so important, so important, so important.
Well, if you think about it, you really can't give out of something you don't have.
Mm,
So the self-love is so critical to who you are before you really can ever love somebody else.
yeah, I think that's where I was getting to with sort of the, you know, people that are perhaps going to try and find their family. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you're trying to find something, perhaps on
Right.
empty
Right.
tank of love,
Mm-hmm.
and even if
Yeah.
it's success, it's probably not going to work really, because you're not, you you know, you're trying to fill something
Mm-hmm.
with others, you know,
Right.
you're hoping that these other people or this family is going to fill this void,
Mm-hmm.
this gap, and
Yep.
actually that's
Yep.
it's not going to work.
Yeah. I agree 100%. That's a whole podcast all in itself of how to love yourself.
There's so many that we can just like branch off from this.
Every day you're gonna have to be doing a podcast, Donna.
Yeah, well, that's the intention. It really is. It really is. Kathy, is there anything you want to say? I know we've talked about adoption, and I've just we've just gone with the flow on this, which I think's great. That's kind of how I want every podcast to be. I just want to go with the flow. I don't want to be reading questions and da. I did send some
Mm-hmm.
questions before, but I don't know. I don't even want to look at them. Is there
Yeah.
is there anything? Is there anything more? I don't want to come off here and you to think, oh, I didn't say that.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, I think really and truly interesting how we have navigated back and forth in this podcast, but we've come back down to the love piece of it because that is so critical. And I think for somebody, it's hard. I would find it hard to look around the creation of the beauty of the world, right? Mountains, majestic seas, all of this, and not be able to identify some type of creator, some type of whoever that is to whomever, and how that looks to you. For me, I call it God. But I would encourage any of the listeners, if they haven't connected to creator, that to take the time and figure out what that looks like. Because until that's really done, and you come into relationship with yourself, you're always going to be out expecting the other relationship to fulfill you. And it can't. Fulfillment has to come from within before you can be in a healthy relationship somewhere else. And this doesn't have to do with, I mean, that's just the core, I think, of who we are as people. And it's so critical. And how, I mean, I can look back at my whole life and go, I was always trying to have somebody else fill me up, right? Just because that's what I needed. You hear my dogs going crazy?
Yeah.
They agree. They're talking dog language. They're like, yes, you need to. Oh, they want people to go out and adopt dogs too. That's what they're saying. I don't know why they're going off. Yeah, get a dog, adopt some dogs, and people too. But yeah, I think for me, it's the love component. Just being kind to yourself, being gentle to yourself. And I'm speaking what I am still walking out. I'm aware that I have to be kind to myself. I really, when I look at the mirror, and I did this just the other day, I know it's funny, but I looked in the mirror and I said, you are a beautiful woman. You're smart. You have a great smile. You care for people. You genuinely want the best for people. So anything that brings negative energy, negative whatever, I fall out of agreement with that. I don't want to be a part of it. I want love and my essence to flow from me.
Yeah.
I talk to myself in the mirror like that sometimes because it gets messy in here.
Yeah.
So speaking out loud audibly to
Yeah.
yourself is so important.
I love that. And I know that mirror work is can be one of the hardest things for people to do.
Mm-hmm.
It gets easier. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. But it is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, some people try it and just you maybe experience how difficult that is. So for you to say that you do that and and that is, yeah.
I will tell you, when I first started doing it many, many years ago, when I went through my divorce and all of that, I spent a lot of times of ugly crying in the mirror. I mean, ugly tears and crying and saying, you are beautiful. You have value, because I had been devalued in a relationship and just, you know, it was very upside down. My whole life came upside down. And so I was just like in the mirror yesterday, there were some things going on and I just had to speak to myself. Because if there's nobody else to speak to you, do you love yourself enough to speak to your core being, to your soul? I'd say, soul, don't you be downtrodden. You've got a lot to live for. Smile, keep going, you know, keep going.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
love
mirror
that.
work.
It is. I love that. And you know, I think it's huge, really, because I think children of adoption, fostering, or feeling that of rejection would be feeling like quite alone, maybe, and isolated, rejected. But
Mm-hmm.
actually, you have got yourself. You've got
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and you can. And I think, but as you get older, it's like I think you can lose yourself, and it feels like you've just got all these voices in your head, and you just. "Ugh." But actually, you know, no, we've actually got ourselves, and we can love ourselves, and we can.
I think that's I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and I think that's a great test that anybody that's listening to this podcast should hang up. Well, whenever the podcast is done, go stand in front of the mirror with nobody else around. How long can you stare at yourself in the mirror? And can you say, you are a beautiful human being? You have much to give. If you can't easily do that and you find yourself looking off, you know there's some work to be done on the inside.
Yeah.
The man that I am seeing, when we first started getting a little bit more closer, he'd look at me and I'd look at him and I'd look away, and I'd look at him and I'd look away. And now I can just stare at him because I've become very comfortable, and part of my healing, right? I can just, he looked at me the other day and he said, you are beautiful. And I went, yes, I am. Where before I made in my head, I might have made excuses. Well, you're just saying that.
Oh, don't.
Whatever, right?
Well, this because that's what people do. I mean,
Yes, we minimize ourselves.
We do. A lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yep.
don't know how long ago it was, but I learned the lesson to say thank you.
Yes.
So when people pay you a compliment,
Yep.
thank you. Because I
Yep.
would, and many people do, oh, no, no, it's not real, no. And it's actually just train yourself. Thank you. Accept
Yes.
it. Take it. Own it. It's yours.
Yep.
Someone's just given you that.
Yep.
Don't throw it away.
Yep.
But we do, don't we?
Yep.
Even in, like you say, even in relationships.
So we don't even have to put yourself out there with anybody else. Go stand in the mirror, because the person in the mirror is the person that is most important.
Yeah.
What do you think about yourself? My mission, having been through what I've been through, is really, I want to speak into people's lives. What I've come through, I want to speak in to say, you are valuable. To the mother that may be facing having to give her baby up for adoption, you are valuable. You are bringing forth life. To the family that may be considering adoption, you are valuable to that child's life. Don't think you're not valuable. Everybody has something to contribute.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
Beautiful. So I don't know how far and wide this podcast is going to go. But Kathy, you are in Florida.
Yep, United States.
You can see here, anyone that's watching the YouTube will see that it says on your video, childbirth concierge. So yeah, that's whereabouts are you? What are you doing? Can anyone, if anyone's like resonated with you, can
Well,
they?
they can find me, childbirthconcierge.com is my company. So they can pop on that and find my email easily that way. You can put it in the show notes. I mean, I'm very open because I want people to thrive, and I love people. I
Yeah,
just genuinely love people. So yeah, they can reach out.
I think they're going to love you too.
Yeah, I love them. They haven't even met me yet. That's how much I love me. I love them.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy, so much. You for talking to me in my first ever podcast, first of many. I've got a feeling we're going to talk again.
Oh yes, we
I
have
know
so much to talk about.
relationships, when we were like prepping this a couple of weeks ago, talking about setting it up and stuff, all sorts of things came up. So yeah, I
Yeah.
know that I'm going to be talking to you again.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Mwah. All right, and scene.
So, what did you think? Did you enjoy it? I would love to know what your thoughts are. Wherever you're seeing or hearing this, please let me know what your thoughts are. And if you'd like to reach me directly, then you can. I've set up an email directly for this project, and it's searchingfortruth, that's for Donna Joseph, @gmail.com. Other than that, all I can say is please share this. There are loads of children out there that are looking for their forever homes. So if you know anyone that you think this video or this audio is going to resonate with, then please do share. And remember, I don't know where you are listening to this, but you can also find the video on Facebook, Visible Connections, or on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much. There will be another podcast next week. So until then, have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.